I'm going to start breaking the ice and asking you all, what are you seeing in here? What is it? Typewriter, right? OK, now imagine that you are a teacher in Manchester, and you're showing this to your 7-year-old students. And they say, cool, a laptop that prints as you type, and you don't need to plug it in. So that's kind of like the type of work I do. I'm always trying to see things from a different perspective. And we're going to talk about this in a minute. But I was invited, and thank you very much for having me here. I was invited to talk about connecting people, culture, technology, and society using objects as storytellers. That's the angle that I picked. And we are going to do that through everything we touch. And as I will talk, I will invite you all to think about all the things that you touch on a single day. But before, I want to tell you a little bit about me, and I'm not going to show you a picture of me when I was a child. Just imagine a shorter version and wearing an Argentinian football shirt. So I'm an industrial designer. I obtained my degree in the University of Buenos Aires, Argentina, where I'm from. And I moved to London in 2000, and I stayed since, to do a master in design, strategy, and innovation at Brunel University. And I have spent all of my life observing since I was a little girl. And when I moved to London, I did my master, and I did a placement at consultancy Seymourpowell. Everybody knows Seymourpowell? Somebody knows? OK. Seymourpowell is an amazing product design consultancy based in London. It is kind of like the American IDEO, if I could say that. But I worked for these guys for 12 years. And it's a typical product design consultancy. And when I joined, I suggested them to build an ethnographic research division within the company, where before we design something, we would look at consumer needs, or user needs, better said, and understand cultures, because many of the products that we were designing were to be used in different parts of the world. I worked with them. I became a head of research and director of futures. And in 2012, I decided to leave and started my own small practice called TheOverworld. And I think, at the moment when you want to leave a company, probably with hindsight, you can explain yourself why you wanted to leave the company. But I was feeling that I just wanted to be myself. And those guys always let me be myself. So they were great, by the way. But I didn't want to move upwards, sideways. I just wanted to be me and unite all those parts of me in one thing. So I set up this small agency in my house. And it's a little studio, and it has 4 seats. And if it has more than 4 seats, means that I am not doing the work. So I like to work in all the projects that I do. And I work as a consultant for clients of the likes of Google Creative Lab, RGA, McKinsey, Nike, Starbucks, and I will remember the other ones, thinking about the future and thinking about what products, services, comms we're going to create. But it's all based on observing people and all based in uncovering insights. So when I say I spent most of my life observing, that's kind of like what I've done all my life. I observe people doing things. And when I started, which are the videos at the top and most of the work that I was doing at Seymourpowell, it was really easy to observe things in a way, because things were so linear. You could observe somebody watching telly, or you could observe somebody ironing, or you could observe somebody following a beauty routine. That's what you do as an ethnographer, which I would rather call myself. But then things were getting more kind of like sophisticated, and clients weren't asking me things like observing something so physical. There were questions like, we wanted to understand optimism. And for example, the second row of videos there, that was the last project that I did at Seymourpowell. I was working for Nokia, and the client wanted to understand what optimism meant for the young creative generation in certain cities around the world. So I was doing the project, and the client came with me to do it. And we were first in Chicago and Seattle. And he actually was more fascinated by the idea that I was talking to real people about it than just what the project was going to end up to. And it wasn't necessarily going to lead to the design of products. So we made that into viral campaigns. So he said, next time, I'm going to give you a crew, and you are going to go around the world and talk to people, and that ethnographic work is going to become the communications for Nokia. So then from there, I said, OK, I will kind of like also help me to leave the design, product design world, and to start to work outside of the area, because I could do, with the stuff that I was doing about observing, I could do much more. So these are kind of like this type of work that I do now. They are like the little kids there. I work with Google on the development of the first coding toy, which became Project Blogs, and that's future of search. Here, this is just kind of like a map to show you like life from where I was seeing it all the time. So all the work that I would do, it would be like, one day I will be looking at mobile working, jewelry, fridge, freezers, whiskey, because these are all the things that we had to design. So I was always looking at life from that point of view in different parts of the world. So that's kind of like all what I've been doing in the last 17 years. And then the products became something like the future of productivity, cooking, health and wellness, shopping. So that's kind of like an idea of the type of clients. And it's just to show you how one day you could be working for Dior, and the other one you could be working for Castrol. And it's kind of like the type of things, how they change. So I decided to write this book, and I will tell you why. It's called Everything We Touch. And I didn't bring it to sell on the stand, but I have a few copies to gift if somebody wants one. So, but before I tell you why I did this book, the book is about the story of people told around the world by all the objects they touch on a single day. So one thing, all my clients wanted to know about the future of stuff. And people, what I was realizing that actually they wanted to understand the present. And so that was one of the things that made me think that I had to understand and explain what was actually happening now. The other thing that happened is, like, as I show you with the typewriter, and I'm going to show you more examples, things are not always what they seem. And usability and semantics are out of sync these days, at least in the world of product design. And number three, where like people are not always who they seem, and I say this in a nice way, and that stereotypes and traditional segmentation models do not longer work. So in the same way that I show you this, I'm going to show you smartphone. But do you know actually what it is? It's today's most popular photo camera. And if I show you a photo camera, it's today's most popular video camera. And if I show you this, which is, of course, is a game console, is actually Netflix's most popular streaming platform. So when around 2011, when the sales of game consoles went up like that, 2012 was it, all the stats were showing that, oh, people got into gaming more. You know, sales consoles the sales are huge. But actually, it wasn't what was happening. What was happening was people were buying a console that cost $300 to make their TV a smart TV so they could watch Netflix rather than ditching the plasma and buying a smart TV again. But if you just look at the data and you don't really look at what people are doing, you missed all those little things that explain what we're doing. So another example, I was with my son, and we were doing crosswords, and that one came up, minicab. What he said? Uber, instead of taxi. And you know, what I like about the story also is that's just the word as he knows it. You know, that's Uber. He takes more Ubers than taxis. And not talking necessarily about Uber, but the thing is, we were both, him and I, on an Uber. And he just followed the whole thing. You know, he followed that where I was at home. I ordered it. We were in the Uber. For some reason, we were talking to each other, and we weren't talking to the driver. We were running late, so I kept looking at the app, kind of monitoring where exactly I was and how long it was going to take to get there. And my son asked me about the driver. Why is he here? And kind of from where I look at things, what I understood is actually Uber, he thought that I was controlling the whole experience from my phone. So in his mind, Uber is the link between cars as we know them and driverless cars. So he's not going to be that scared of them because he's seeing them think. He thinks that I'm already controlling it from my phone. So it's interesting to think about how the other generations will look at things. And one that happened with my daughter, we were in Rome, went up the dome, and when I got there, I took that photo after we walked the 300 steps up, and she said, Mommy, why do you take pictures of things that you can find on the internet? And I just love her way of thinking, And that explains how they view the world. And if you look at the Snapchat or things like that, you will never find a picture of something that they found on the internet. So I like, and I call it digital ecology, but I like about the way that they think about content, and I think they already are going to be pushing the way in which we treat digital content as something that it doesn't matter because it doesn't take any space and we just upload it and upload it. So we see things as we are. It's all about points of view. Things are not so linear anymore, and that's why it's a huge shift on perception, on behaviors, and it's driven by our perceptions. And that's why the present is such a complicated place, because there are many of us looking at things from different points of view, and there is not just one truth or one way. So when I work with any of my clients, I go, okay, we are going to understand the present, see what's happening, go back to the past, look for patterns, identify change, and then think about the future with imagination and wisdom. I think that's the way that you have to think about the future. And I will give you an example. So, for example, I did a project for LG about the future of entertainment, and I do a lot of work in media. I was here, and luckily, when I did the project, LG asked me that question in 2013. Luckily, in 2003, I did the same for Samsung, so I had all this material back then. Do you remember how things were in 2003? We used to, watch tellies, and we used to have home offices, or not, but a place at home with a computer where we used to work. And the things were really, really different. And the problems we had when we were working on this project were like, we have too many cables, we have too many boxes, we have too many remote controls, we don't like the speakers. Those are the issues that were coming from a design point of view. When I look at the problem again into one, and this, as you can see, we had an object for a specific thing that we were doing. When I look at the problem back in 2013, that blur was gone. And it was like with any device you could pick, and you could watch that content anywhere, anytime. And the huge shift that happened that I understood was when internet got into our tellies, and our tellies got into our smart devices, breaking completely that link. And as humans, we're still trying to adapt and evolve. No? So you have a situation where, because your telly is more interactive, you are suffering with a remote control to try to type something there, and then you're watching a telly with your laptop in bed, with a laptop in bed or a keyboard that you don't need. So we're not there yet in terms of evolution of how we use our products. But later on, I was in Seattle doing a project for Starbucks and Google, a partnership. And I was in one of the stores in University Village. And as a fly on the wall, I'm looking at him, and he's there with a laptop, the guy here with the headphones. Later on, I find him here in the sofa. So I go and I ask him, hey, what were you doing? I just noticed that you changed seats. And he said, yes, because there I was studying, and then I needed to take a break and watch some comedy. So it's interesting how that dynamic changes. And if you don't observe that, you don't understand how people use spaces. And when the limits are not given by a device attached somewhere, we are the ones imposing the limits ourselves. Similarly, these are my kids. They are watching things. I was doing a talk at Disney Latin America, and I revised the topic. And I asked my kids, because they always ask me the same question, can I watch something? And depending on how I feel, I say yes or no. But I never understand why they would go and either watch telly or watch in the tablet or watch in the phone or watch in the thing. So I asked them, and they explained it to me. So they say, we only watch the telly when we agree together that the two of us want to watch the same thing. And when one of us have a friend around, we will use the tablet, and we will put the headphones so we can be together, but we could be private. But my son will say, if I want Lola, my daughter, to be with me and watch something, I will not put headphones on so she comes along. But if I don't want her to bother me or doing what I'm doing, I will just put my headphones and do it that way. So what I'm saying is, like, we need new words to talk about things, because it's not just watch something. This is what we do. And as designers, we need to start to understand and not be so lazy in the way that we call things, and understand how things happen. And this way, we are going to be able to understand the future. So why did I write the book? Because all of these objects, I picked them up from the book. Whenever I see somebody touching any of these things, I know what that person is doing. But whenever I see somebody with this, I don't know what that person is doing. And that was a big gap in research. So I'm just really conscious of the time, but well, I felt the urge to document our relationship with objects. That's what I did it. And I wanted to create a time capsule of our time, something that I call future archaeology. And I'm going to play you a quick film. And I wanted to know what our physical footprints say about us. So this is my new world, the one that I did, and it was everything we touch. 6 continents, 62 people.
When you just look at the artifacts of somebody's life, it is very much what an archaeologist does, right? I mean, they dig up stuff, and just from a shard of pottery, they could sometimes tell a lot about the civilization that lived. In lieu of having these things as artifacts, maybe, you know, future generations will find this kind of thing very interesting, I think.
You could easily relate to other people through objects. Being able to understand that at an individual level, I think is a brilliant exercise.
Sometimes I think you learn how deep is reality for the other one, how complex is like everyday living. As you get closer, everything gets more complicated. So from de cerca, nadie es normal.
It lets you reflect on your own life.
So I guess it's kind of healthy to look at yourself as some other point of view or the outsider.
And then you realise you have all these things that make your day better, your little ritual in the morning.
We're talking about the part of life that is not the one that we talk about. To be able to bring those things out rather than the usual stuff that people use to define themselves brings something else that makes people really curious.
But it's the fact that it's all at once. It gives you a perspective that you'd never normally get. You never see life that way.
If one does do, I think, what you've done and get people to collect the objects together of their one day in their life, anything that documents a specific moment of an individual has an incredible value.
My first reaction is that visceral one, my God, this is beautiful, which encourages you to go in and have a look. And then when you go in and have a look and start to analyse what's gone on here, then the second word that comes to mind is it's absolutely fascinating.
So, thank you. So that was my question. Many of the things we know about past civilizations are from the objects found. Will ours do the same? What people will think in the future of us if they were to make sense by our physical footprint? So rule number 1, when I briefed people to participate, keep a chronological record of everything you touch in a single day from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed. Rule number 2, honesty is at the heart of participating. You have to give me everything, otherwise the project is not for you. And then when you do that and people have to express themselves with objects, you have things like I was photographing this lovely mariachi, and is my pointer working? Yeah. And then somebody will come with extra large condoms when they're going to talk about their lives, obviously. And so rule number 3, everybody have the same space. 2 meters 70 by 4, and that's the way that I photograph everything. So the more objects, more crammed or less. I'm going to skip through how I did it, and then I can answer that on the Q&A. But I have to find a way of doing it that around the world I could take the same standard picture with everyone. And the youngest person that I photographed is Baby Arlo in London 1 month, and Mr. Lu, a puppeteer in Shanghai, 71, is the oldest. So that's a photo of Mr. Lu in China. And I love when we think about China, and I will show you the photo after him. So Mr. Lu is 71, he's a puppeteer, and he makes all the puppets himself. And everything on this page is from China and made in China. And Mr. Lu has even Little Mouse, Red Book, Revolutionary Opera, and all the objects talk about that old China where he belongs to. And if you go to the following page, that's Nene, a screen printing artist, 28, from China also. And when I took this photo, she looked at it, and she told me, I feel that I'm a citizen of the world. I feel equal to all the world people. And the things in which she saw herself reflected similar as the other ones was actually because all the literature that she had, all the things, all the clothes that she wore, all the brands that she had. And Nene had like Uniqlo, jeans, Californian Vans, a jumper from Cumbria. She read Baudelaire. And that was the way in which she was reflecting, and she was happy to feel that she belonged to a new world, and she called the golden time of China. And something else, like I love as a product designer when you find objects that are subverting the use. So she has a blender there, but it's actually she's using it to mix paint, obviously, not to bake. She looked at this photo and she told me, oh my God, I'm so sad. My life is all about work. And I was looking at the photo and I was so kind of like inspired by seeing all the colors and the way she works, but for herself there was a lot of work and less pleasure. So this is one of my favorite photos on the book, and it's one about my mom. And she's 62, well, she was 62 at the time I took the photo, and she lives in Buenos Aires. Not only this photo says a lot in a personal level, because when I grew up, my mom worked in banking, and she would have never ever touched any of the things that she's touching here, like Reiki, music, and into astrology, and doing kind of like birth charts. She had a complete different life to that. And I haven't lived with her for 17 years, well, not with her, but in the same country. So it's nice to kind of like see your family and your friends again with a new lens and see their lives. But in a kind of like level that will interest everyone, and if we think about the example of the typewriter, my mom's page has a lot of objects that are endangered in the same way that a typewriter we could consider it extinct, more or less. So my mom wakes up, if my pointer works, I will show you. Well, it's all chronological. So she wakes up with an alarm. There it is. She wakes up with an alarm clock. How many people do that? Not many. Good, two. Okay, that's another endangered object. And then she follows with a radio. So she has two radios, one that she listens to in the bedroom and the one that she listens to in the kitchen. And then it goes, her day goes on. She gets ready to go to Pilates, grabs the keys, leaves the house. If you follow me there, she has money. How many of us do not touch money on a daily basis? A lot. So that's another thing that is disappearing. This one is kind of like a pretty obvious one, the landline. How many of us pick up the landline on a daily basis? This one is the most amazing one from a point of view of our expression. CDs. People do not touch music anymore. My mom is one of them, but I photographed for the book over 60 people. Only 3 touch music. And if you think about what I was saying earlier about our objects as an expression of ourselves and how music is so important to our lives, and it always was. So I don't know anything about the music taste of the people that I photograph, unless they have vinyls. So my mom is one of those. Then going back to the point that I made earlier, here she's watching telly, and I know because she has a remote control, but most of people don't. So only a quarter of the people in the book have a remote control, yet I know that they all are watching something before they go to bed. And her remote control is quite peculiar, if you can see. She has it covered with cling film, so the letters don't rub off. So those are kind of nice little things about us humans and our objects. Here is a toddler from Tokyo, Anna. She's 2. She's the one that touched the most. So I'm going to come this way. So I just discovered that if I come this way, I can look at you and point, sorry. So she's 2. She touched 240 things are on this page. And it's so lovely. Why? Because she's 2 and she just touches. She doesn't touch it with a purpose, she just touches it because she wants to. And that's quite liberating. And also, things like, if you can see over there, there are all her toys, but if you can see down here are all these medicine pots. And I purposely lay them out in the same way that I lay down the toys, because as her dad was handing me over her objects, her dad said, oh gosh, she was playing with all the medicines that I was giving her a bath, and she wasn't supposed to play with that. So that's what we think, that she's not supposed to play with that. But why? It looks the same. I mean, because we put primary colors in toys, we expect kids to realize that that's a toy, and because we don't put primary colors on medicines, we expect them not to play. So these are all kind of like the little things about well, discovering touch and discovering things and not being regulated or restricted by what you should be doing. This is a film director from Los Angeles, California. And I love her color palette and I love everything. And I was following her on Instagram and I was wondering, is everything that she has so beautifully perfect? And it was, you know, because when you're doing this, you know, like I could be wearing, I don't know, I could be wearing a dress or wearing an earring, something that says something about me. But when you ask somebody to give you a whole day in their life, the tea towel appears, the cling film, all those objects that we don't really think about and pay attention. But Claire had a really beautiful color palette. Well, she has records, as you see there, Fleetwood Mac. Something to also note here, can you see that? These objects, in 5 years' time, if I take this photo again, they're not going to be there. And they're the ones that are going to look, they're going to be gone. So we tend to think about technology as the future, but actually it's the past. However, the chopping board, the towel, the knife are going to be there, and they're going to look normal to us. But those are all the things that are not. And we have Davis from Seattle. He is a busker, and he plays in the streets of Seattle. And something lovely that David taught me is, he said, this is pretty much everything that I lived with. I don't have many more things in my house. This is kind of like my day. And I was wondering about that, and he told me that he had a really nice way of looking at his possessions. And he said, my possessions are about the present. I don't want to have any objects that have to do with my past, and I don't want to have any objects that have to do with my future. And I understood the concept about the past. You know, when we hang on to something, and sometimes it's nice to let it go. But I was more curious about the one of not hanging up with objects that have to do with the future. And he said, yes, all those things that you have because one day you think you're going to be that. So I give you examples, a guitar, you know, like because one day I think that I'm going to learn to play a guitar. A sewing machine, because one day I think I'm going to learn to sew. So that's a really nice thing. You know, we have those objects and we keep them in our lives as dreams to make us think that one day we're going to be that person. But it's actually quite nice and liberating just to let them go. And actually, if you want to be that person, go and chase that dream. He was so free spirit about everything that I asked him, what happens if you lose your violin? And he said, it doesn't matter. I am the violinist, not the violin. So she is Vania. She is my friend's cleaner. She's from Bulgaria, and she lives in London. And Vania wakes up in the morning, goes to work. I love little details, like when she's in the bus, she files her nails. And I can just imagine her in the bus doing that. And these are when she's working at her clients' homes, and that's when she gets back home. And Vania told me something that I thought it was quite interesting. She says, if I spend most of my day touching, and she referred to her clients as posh people. So she said, if I spend most of my day touching the things that my clients don't want to touch, what things they will be touching that I don't want to touch? And she asked that question. So she saw her day as touching the things that other people don't want it to touch. So he's a geisha from Tokyo. And I do a lot of work with clients, and sometimes I always challenge the idea of when people talk about millennials or cluster people by age, by gender. And he would be, on paper, a millennial from Tokyo, if you look at that. His life is so much more interesting than that. He wakes up in the morning, goes to work, and then when the night comes, he becomes his mom. His mom died at a very early age and left him with a geisha house of 10 geishas, and that was the family lived off. So he then becomes the person that his mom is and works as a geisha and then goes to bed at night. And when I think that stereotyping and segmentations don't work, because life is so much more complex at how people that sit on the side of brands or segmentation look at it. And one of my favorites as well is a cowboy from Tucson, Arizona. Well, guys from America, I'm not telling you anything about a cowboy, but when I show this photo, in other parts of the world, people get really excited to see the life of a cowboy. His tools haven't changed for more than 100 years, and that's something nice to see how some professions and some jobs have the same tools. The last thing he touches when he goes to bed is Head and Shoulders and Dove men. So I work with so many packaging and consumer goods companies, all FMCG in all my life. And people always imagine their brand in a shelf. Head and Shoulders is next to this and next to that. And how many times I've seen mood boards of, what a guy that uses Head and Shoulders will do. And Head and Shoulders here is next to American Spirit cigarettes, Dove man, and whiskey. And that's real life. Real life is not just how we see brands. Real life is when everything comes together. I know you're all designers, so you're not going to be like, oh, wow, I didn't realize. But so many people don't do. So if I show you this photo, you need to guess the profession. So Kitty wakes up in the morning. She has all natural products. She's vegan. She drinks smoothies. She's into yoga. She reads Patti Smith. So everything lovely, healthy, and natural. What does Kitty do? She's from Melbourne. She's a tattoo artist. So that's her life. And I'm not saying there's anything strange about that, but when I show this to some people, and if I was to say, did you imagine a tattoo artist, being vegan, using Lush and all natural brands, and being into yoga and into food? And people expect to see cigarettes, fags, rock and roll, heavy metal. And it's interesting just to see how life is not how you think it is. This is life. You need to guess the age of this person. Okay, I'm running out of time. So she's 13. How do you know she's 13? She's a teen. Because all of these things are coming into her life, makeup, push-up bras, hair straighteners, but she still goes to bed with the Muppets pyjama and the little piglet. So I just flick through virtual reality artists. What do they touch in a day? I ran out of time, I'm sorry, but you could have a look at the book. And you have that was a FX artist. On the book, when you turn the page, you get to figure out who the person is. And here you have an inventory of all the brands and the products they touch for the ones that are curious about brands. The brand that featured the most in the book is Apple, followed by Colgate. Nobody would have guessed. And then IKEA, Uniqlo, H&M, Nike, and that's it.
We're out of time, but I just want to put on the record in front of everybody that I actually want one of the books that you brought because I think it's beautiful. Could you do one thing is like, was there one universal object that you found that sort of represents us all amongst the things?
Yeah, I didn't know you were going to ask me that, but a bowl.
A bowl. That's nice.
Yeah, it's the most featured object in the whole book, a bowl. Yeah.
Oh, that's so sweet. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.